Hello and welcome to the Network Automation Nerds podcast, where we explore the latest in network automation from a practitioner's perspective. I'm your host, Eric Cho, a network engineer who loves everything about network automation. Today, we're very excited to welcome Deepak Ahuja, CTO and founder of CloudMyLab, a company that is redefining the way individuals and organizations access hands-on cloud-based labs and network environments, where we'll explore Deepak's journey as a founder, then the challenges and opportunities of building cutting-edge cloud solutions, how you and I could benefit from the service, and the trends shaping the networking industries today and tomorrow. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the show, Deepak.
Thank you, Eric, for having me.
Yeah, it's very excited to, kind of have this service because I remember even when I was doing my certification, especially CCIE, where lab is just an absolute requirement, that's always like the biggest headache. And I want to say through my failed attempts and my attempt of finally passing, the biggest difference was Dynamips, which was, like a virtual lab where I don't have to like carry 8 different routers with me everywhere I go. And so it's very excited to, kind of see the service taking off. And I'm kind of jealous of the people who are today like going through the certification process and have all these tools and at their fingertips.
Right. Trust me, I completely agree with you. I think I got my first CCIE back in 2006. And I still remember building the entire lab for us. It was about 12 watt routers, bunch of switches. And by the time I got to my second CCIE, which was service provider, I actually built a PC at home with Dynamips. So I do get where, it's just so much easier. And of course, with CloudMyLab, we bring in a lot more technological aspect and are learning over the years to actually offer those labs to candidates who are preparing for any kind of certification.
Man, I like that flex. Speaking like a true founder, where he just like, hey, my first CCIE and my, one of my 5 CCIEs. But I think I got too excited about talking, like the service and CloudMyLab. Before we jump into that, which I definitely want to hear more stories about, is, can you tell us a little about yourself? And you mentioned a little bit about, your certification path, but maybe you could just give us a, kind of high level view of how did you get into technology? How did you, find your passion in networking and now a founder?
Oh, absolutely. Eric, I was born in New Delhi, India, in a very loving family and encouraged for curiosity and learning. My dad was a chemical engineer, so, born in an Indian household, you're obviously pushed towards education a lot.
As Asians, we know what we're talking about when we say, oh, the parents is like, oh, you got an A? Why isn't that A plus?
Yes, exactly. Right. So I found myself fascinated with computers, which led me to pursue a degree in computer applications. And my first job out of college, I worked for IBM in a tech support role, which was a short year and a half stint. And, but it did teach me the value of structured problem solving. And, the real turning point in my career is when I entered the Cisco ecosystem. That changed my life. And I still tell a lot of people this. I owe my career in this company to what I learned at Cisco. So a lot of thanks to Cisco. I spent over 12 years at Cisco. I started out as a LAN switching tech engineer and eventually, growing into a role of a technical solution architect. That was my last role at Cisco. Along the way, I earned 3 CCIEs, 50 other certifications. At one point in time, I was one of the most certified engineers in my group.
Give or take, right? 50, give or take 1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I had the opportunity while working for Cisco, working with Cisco Learning, Advanced Services. And my last role was data center architect for America Sales, right? That role actually gave me exposure not just to networking technologies, but to real world challenges that all of us engineers face, especially around learning and access, right? And probably you don't hear it the first time that, okay, I have a situation. How do I reproduce it, right?
Yeah, yeah, especially for tech.
Yeah. I was fortunate that my employer supported my learning endeavors and they sponsored our certifications being a part of Cisco. But I couldn't help think about the aspiring engineers. I was mentoring a lot of CCIE groups back in the day, and I would see engineers from all over the world, specifically, from Southeast Asia or Africa or South America, who were just as talented, but they lacked access to the resources. Even for a starting certification, they were struggling for labs, right? They had no real means of practicing anything or get that competitive edge. And I think that did not sit right with me. And, as a learning community or a network engineering community, I think there should be opportunities for everybody to learn. A cost of a lab should not be $5,000 because, it's easy for us here in the United States to say $5,000, but a $5,000 is a lot of money in various places, right? So when I left Cisco, I founded CloudMyLab with a clear mission to democratize the learning and access environment. For student, aspiring network engineers worldwide, regardless of your background or budget, learning should not stop. That was our primary mission. But we didn't stop there. As we were working with more engineers and enterprises, we saw a new challenge that companies were struggling to validate the change control, automation processes, and new solutions, right? Think of any large service provider in our country or in any foreign country. They actually spend millions of dollars creating a physical replica of their network to actually plan their change control or network rollouts or test their automation playbooks. That kind of investment is simply not feasible for most organizations, right? So we expanded CloudMyLab's platform to enable digital and hybrid network twins.
Okay.
Right. And I'll come down to into details what those are. But giving essentially a way to enterprise to emulate, simulate, performance test their changes without the CapEx burden. And I think that idea took off really well. And honestly, we have not looked back since that day, right? At the end of the day, our goal is very simple: enable learning, testing, and innovation without barriers.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, like I said, I think I completely agree with you that access was, one of the major barriers for people who were going through certification. And I wanted to ask, so when was the time where you found CloudMyLab? So I'll be honest, I haven't came across CloudMyLab until AutoCon 2, where, we saw the videos with Ryan and, packet pushers. And then I got in touch with it. So when was this? Because I wanted to kind of correlate that with, like, say, Cisco Modern Lab or other, virtual lab environments.
So 2016, October, that's where we founded it.
Nice. Very cool. So I think that was the time. Oh, obviously, it was before CML, and there was like being an internal Cisco, right? Like you guys had all the tools, both virtual and physical.
Yeah.
But at the time, there were still other EVE-NG or there's other GNS3, all the other virtual labs, right? So why did you decide to cloud my lab versus just pushing people toward those platforms? Was it just like anything special or, purely cloud-based or access or what?
Absolutely. So not only it was EVE-NG availability, GNS3, but Cisco CML was called Cisco Viral.
Oh yeah, that's right. Viral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I may have pronounced it wrong, but yeah, VRL.
Now, let's say even if you have EVE-NG, if you have GNS3, or if you have Cisco Viral or Viral, right, where do you run it?
Yeah.
And the problem remains the same, right? That you need, back in the day, we actually did a blog on this, that you spend about between $1,200 and $1,500 on a laptop, which can actually run your CCNP based topologies.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were issues. How do you get the images? How do you make sure that you cannot download copyrighted stuff? Plus the effort of basically deploying it, making sure it runs, it doesn't crash. It was a lot of pieces that took time away from learning.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, you know what? We'll not only give our platform, but we'll also offer hosted EVE-NG or hosted GNS3 or hosted Viral. And they are first-class citizens at CloudMyLab. Like those platform enables a lot of people. And, we do take a lot of pride in our exclusive partnership with EVE-NG.
Yeah. In a way, if I were to paraphrase that, it's kind of complementary. You're not reinventing the wheel where some of these virtualized platforms are already there, but you are solving a different problem, such as, you take away all the snafus that you have to do in order to get the lab and running. So when you launch it, you could just get directly to the problem itself and getting to the learning itself, as opposed to, like hearing the fan going off. That's my experience.
Right. Also, you hit the ground running. You're not wasting time. You have an environment which will actually work. You don't have to troubleshoot. taken away a lot of that pain. And our goal was to cost optimize it to a point where people can actually access it for a cost of a coffee cup or a couple of coffee cups based on how far deep you wanted to go with your infrastructure in a lab environment. And it was ready to go.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting that you mentioned those were the problem that you're trying to solve. So was there any problem that you in the days where, between 2016 to maybe a few years after you found the lab, where you found your company, where you thought, that's a problem I could solve, but that's not our core, so I'm not going to do it. So is there any instance like that?
Sure. So let me give you a little bit of background, right? So when we were thinking of CloudMyLab, right, the idea which it was born out of was a powerful realization, especially working on certifications and working on large accounts, is practice makes perfect, right? And this applies to network engineering and automation a lot that people don't think about it. So imagine for a second, before a pilot ever flies a real aircraft, they spend hundreds of hours in a simulator
Right.
preparing for every possible scenario, failure, turbulence, emergency landing, or take a Navy SEAL team, for example, right? They rehearse missions dozens of times at a full scale mock-ups before they actually ever hit the field. They simulate, they validate, they reiterate. Because, in those worlds, failure isn't an option. So why should network be any different? If we take the same logic and apply it to, let's say, enterprise network or learning, specifically when we talk about enterprise network, it carries billions of dollars worth of transactional data, critical healthcare data, national infrastructure, right? And a lot of times we push changes with a peer review, documented plan, and at the very best, gut level trust in our judgment and experience, right? When we talk about any platform from an engineering perspective, learning perspective, or even enterprise or organizational or corporate perspective, there is not a playground which you can use to play. So let's say if you play a sport, right? You need a place to practice, to get better at that sport. We wanted to create that place which could be used for practicing. And whether underneath the hood tools you could use GNS3 because the people are already familiar with that tools. Why reinvent the wheels when EVNG and GNS3 has been developing that for several years? We wanted to create that playground so people can start coming and practicing.
I really like that concept. And one of my favorite books is Dr. Nassim Taleb's book on anti-fragile. I mean, most people know his book as, Black Swan and being these Black Swan events that, just to give a high level, right? Like, so you only see white swans. And then there's the Black Swan event that hits, which has major impact, nobody's prepared for, and so on.
Yeah.
But my favorite book out of his series was Anti-Fragile.
Yep.
And Anti-Fragile, as you mentioned, right, like it classifies systems into concave and convex. So in this particular event that you're treating the network as a system that cannot fail, the impact just too large. However, you cannot predict a black swan event where it's going to take it down and so on. So the way to train that network to be anti-fragile and not make it as fragile is to constantly stress test it with different stressors. But you can't test on the real network. So you have this virtual network where, you could spin up this playground where it's, safe to play around with. And so you simulate a, routing protocol failure, you simulate a data center outage, the quote unquote game day or chaos monkey that Netflix like to call it. That's awesome. And definitely a thing that almost I would say not almost, every network needs.
Exactly. And imagine, you have been around for a long time. How many times we have heard the change window was rescheduled, right? Or we had to roll back. Despite reviewing every document, anticipating every failure and, one overlooked detail, one fat fingered command, right? And the whole thing just unravels.
Yeah.
And honestly, being a tag engineer, I've sat through too many of those failed changes. I've seen an engineer say, okay, I don't see any routing protocol traffic. Let me run a debug command and poof, the entire router goes to hell because they forgot to add that little access list there.
What can possibly go wrong?
Right? Smaller things have sent like knock teams into a firefighting mode. And I think that was one of our big aha moments, or I would say one of the most inspiring moments is why can't we create a platform where, engineers or operators can get to thoroughly test or practice before you actually deploy anything in production? If you apply this concept to anything, whether it's a airplane pilot or Navy SEAL team, or you're preparing for your game day, right? You need to rehearse, right? And practice makes perfect. And that's what we actually created, right? That we realized that building, testing, and real world network architectures and automation workflows at scale was something that only privileged organization could do, because it's expensive, it's cross-functional coordination, and so many barriers that are there. So we're trying to remove those barriers. In fact, we coined the term proof of concept as a service, because we aren't just building labs, it's a whole production, right? It's a production scale, vendor agnostic, full stack environments where you could test any of your newer solution that you want to accept, segmentation, VXLAN, a complex multi-network scenario without the risk of a traditional overhead.
Right.
We gave, I would say, real meaning to the concept of network digital twins. And I can guarantee you, you would hear network twins or digital twins. And, I would encourage you to ask them what they exactly mean by that. When we say network twins or digital twins, it's not about spinning up a few router. It's the entirety of the system or their network that we bring to life. We have built parsers from hardware to a virtual router. I'll give you a very simple example, an ASR 9000 router. It's a modular router. There is no way in the world that you can actually emulate the entire routing in a virtual world. But we figured out various ways to do it. Take the physical configuration nomenclature, like it's a modular router. Your interface nomenclature is E213141. That doesn't happen in the virtual world. And how do you translate the config after you test the change and take that config and put it in your production? So our automation, or I would say our augmentation of those scenarios, kind of is helping larger organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I can keep going. I can give you examples that are like, okay, you guys think differently.
You had me at digital twin, right? But even for the biggest organization, I would say top cloud providers that I've been with, we cannot exactly emulate a digital twin just because of the scale that we're at. And so we will have, virtual proof of concept, and then we'll emulate as much as we could. So for example, like a pod or maybe 3 racks that are kind of our single unit of deployment that we could do storage, compute and, backup, whatever it is that, we would emulate. But there's no way we could emulate, 8 football field data center, even digitally or not. So let's get nerdy a little bit. We mentioned a little bit about, CloudMyLab. They're solving the resource issue, but they're not reinventing the wheel for virtualization, the hypervisors, and so on. So can you, give us a little bit of an idea on the tech stack that CloudMyLab uses? Just going from an operator's perspective, right? Like, let's just say I have a credit card that I want to sign up for the service. What are some of the steps that I would go through, and what are the tech interfaces that I would face in front of me?
I love this question because I designed the whole architecture, and I take a lot of pride when we talk about it. So before we go to the operator model, there are some backend components that are actually important from the backend infrastructure.
Sure.
And people at times tell me that you're crazy for a learning environment. Why would you do something like that? But there's a reason behind everything, and I'll come to that. So at the core of our infrastructure, we run a high performance Cisco Nexus fabric. Obviously, I'm an ex Cisco. My love for Cisco goes deep. So it's anchored on a 400 gig backbone, which provides high throughput, low latency, which is required by network environments. And I'll tell you why in a second. From everything to student labs, from a full-blown enterprise digital twin platform, right? It runs on our system. We use a lot of bare metal from Dell, Cisco, and HPE across our data centers.
Mm-hmm.
But what our customers or our users sees at the front end, where the magic happens. And trust me when I say this, we really mean what we do. So each customer gets access to their own fully air-gapped jump box.
Okay.
A secure, isolated environment with multi-factor authentication. From once they're inside, they can connect to either a single server like EVE-NG or JNS3. They can connect to their virtual dedicated bare metal servers where their digital twins are running, or access any virtualization stack that they wanted. Like you just said, I need to build a model of 3 racks with compute, storage, and security, right? So we will emulate that part. And also, I think we can go an extra mile there, is when you said there is nothing called a true digital twin, because you cannot emulate ASICs or you cannot emulate FPGAs.
Yeah. I want to copyright the term digital cousin.
I agree with you. So our form of digital cousin, we call it a hybrid,
Okay.
which is actually could be a true replica of your network, right? And their goals in a network that you want to achieve is what I want to emulate, what I want to simulate, and what I want for real because it cannot be emulated or simulated. So coming back to this, now you have access to your environment. Now, and organizations, it's a different need. Sometimes we do a layer two drop for them so they can connect it back from their infrastructure, like AWS Connect. They actually have partnerships with 196 data centers where we can actually give you a layer two drop for your connection. Plus, we offer site-to-site VPN for those use cases. We offer physical devices that we can send out to avoid any security overlays. And this year, and I think this is a special year, 9 year in making, we got our first set of awards for being a security first approach, just recognized by 2025 Cloud Security Awards. We were named winner in some major categories, and we were up against some of the biggest names. Unfortunately, I cannot say that on your podcast.
It's all right. You just plug in your name, like whatever name you want, just go ahead and plug it in for the listeners.
The best VPN security solution, we got the best firewall security solution, best incident management solution, and best virtual desktop security solution. So we got those four awards, and we are competing against a lot of customers. But coming to the meaty part of it, what differentiates us is our flexibility.
Okay.
We built our platform like a transformer. It adapts and reconfigure based on customer needs. For us, we want to give every customer an a la carte experience. And think from this perspective, specifically when you're working for corporations, everybody has so many different needs. Everybody has their various security stacks, and we have to accommodate, adapt, and build, right? We do integrate in a lot of environments, EVNG, Cisco CML as our stack for first class citizens. But when you need feature testing, emulation or simulation just at scale, we had a biotech company out of Europe. They made us do 800 Arista switches across 3 continents and connected with a fabric. And we were able to do that for them without blinking an eye. Literally took us a week and a half to put together their entire topology, put all their configs, and give them back access in a programmatic manner.
Can you share just the scale, just an approximate, right? Like how many devices are, what is it, like a leaf spine topology? Just kind of give us an idea of, the week and a half that it took to simulate this.
Yes. So I think the largest we have done is about 850 devices across multiple data center as needed, though we are capable of doing it in one location. But as you said, if you want to emulate 8 football fields, how do you actually make that happen?
Right.
So I think the largest we have done in our professional services with a customer on our platform is about 850 devices. Specifically in Arista, it was more of a spine leaf design encompassing, or I would say showing a regional allocation of a data center and how things work. The goal was, most of this was reflecting their top of the rack switches, their end of the row switches, and how their workloads would connect. Plus, at the edge, they were using Arista for doing EVPN and BGP between their network data centers across. So they wanted to emulate United States, a part of Europe, and a part of Asia. And we actually gave them workloads in all the places. And that is one of the reasons that we right now have about 9 locations. Some of the locations we just had to build because we wanted to adapt to the customer and their needs.
So if I were to kind of paraphrase and kind of, strip out some of the things that you talked about. So the first thing that I noticed where you said was, you guys run your own data centers, right? Like it's not a overlaid on somebody else's infrastructure. And the second was, if I were a engineer who's just studying for, my certification, I could just sign up and use just CML or just EVNG and with, like a big hardware that probably it's too big for my basement, but it's okay for a data center. And so you emulate enough out there. However, if you want to emulate or kind of testing beyond just the virtualized platform, because for a virtualized platform, we could test the control plane, but the data plane that there's, we can't stress test the data plane, right? So you guys could still do that via the actual hardware. Is that what it is?
Yes. So that's where the hybrid concept comes in. But most of the emulation part, I would say there are some platforms where you could test data plane with, but you cannot performance test it, right? So for performance testing, you need hardware. But the 850 switches I'm talking about, that were all virtual Arista switches. They were testing, and they recently incepted CMP with Arista, and they wanted to do the cloud vision part of it. So with the entirety of the design. So that was one of the cool projects that we did. For students, right, specifically. So EVNG, I would say, is one of the most powerful platforms because it offers multi-vendor.
Right.
The CML is great, but it kind of limits you based on your personal learning license, right? And you can go up to 20 or 40 devices, mostly Cisco. Cisco does offer some third-party devices. It's a great tool for what you're trying to do. But let's say if you're working on a Palo Alto certification, I would say EVNG is your platform, versus if you're working on a Cisco certification, CML is your platform.
Right, right. So you do have to bring your own license. Is that what I'm hearing? Like, let's just say I'm studying for Cisco certification. I do have to bring my own CML, like personal 20 node license, even if I use CloudMyLab.
Not necessarily. We could go buy the license for you. EVNG, since we are an exclusive partner, we offer it all licensed, ready to go, and what customer needs. But for CML, we do offer bring your own license. If customer wants to bring their own license, even for EVNG, see, Eric, our goal is to support the community, right? For anything they want to bring their own license, we do not nickel dime charge any customer. There's no charges or overages or nothing. What you see is what you get in the best possible format.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah. So I think that's a fantastic resource, right? Because a lot of times, when either the readers of my book or, if people have taken the LinkedIn Learning course, they'll reach out to me and ask for recommendations on labs. And typically, I'll ask for their budget. And I either
Yeah.
point them to the DevNet free rack or always on labs, or, I would just kind of point them to like Black Friday sales. Hey, come on, go get your CMO. It's worth it. But now, I think there's a third option where there's a hosted lab you could just use as you go. That's usage based. So that's a fantastic option alternative.
Right. In fact, it's actually fixed pricing. You pay a fixed amount and you can use it for the whole month. No, it's not that you have to turn it off, turn it back on. And honestly, I hate that idea. It's like, it's a freaking lab. Come on, go use it as much as you want. As an engineer, I understand that I was working on one part of the topology last night and I was so tired I went to sleep. And then I have to come back in the morning and start everything all over again. And God forbid, I was so sleepy, I forgot to save my config. And like, oops, my 8 hours worth of work is gone. Plus, we allow people to go in, buy the labs with a credit card. I think it's very easy to work with us because we are a company built by engineers. We, at heart and core, are an infrastructure and engineering organization. So, to be honest, and I think Robert is going to beat me a little bit on this, is I don't see dollar signs. I see problems that we want to solve. And that's how we train all our support staff and engineers is look at a problem. Money follows.
All right. So I think you follow the Zappos model where you're delivering happiness, right? As opposed to, the dollar sign as you phrased it. So I wanted to also ask about, what kind of trends do you see lab and testing space in network engineering? Maybe we could put, since this is network automation nerds, right? So maybe we could also put a little spin on, emphasize on just the automation piece because for those of us who have done the push enter, then you quickly realize that you're poking yourself in the eye, that you're just automate yourself out of a job kind of a thing. I mean, for that moment. So maybe we could just talk about kind of the trends in lab and testing space and network engineering first, and then maybe put a little spin and context in automation.
Oh, absolutely. So, in my opinion, right, there's a significant shift that's happening in the lab testing and particularly in the infrastructure and automation space, right? Labs are just no longer for training, they're becoming the mission critical part of the environments, right? And if we specifically think from the automation perspective, there are various frameworks that devs or engineers like to use, right? So, we have DevOps engineers and customers are using Ansible. Some are using Terraform. They're using Python. They're using Puppet and Chef, right? So we're seeing a strong move towards the digital twin or POC kind of environment, specifically from the automation space, where they are able to test the entirety of the workflow, like, which includes their CI/CD pipelines or, for the infrastructure, or where the labs are embedded as a release process. Like, think of as developing an application. You go from stage, dev, production, and I think lab is kind of serving that middle model of dev. is that if I'm deploying an automation, how do I actually drive it? So driving that part of it, you need an environment. Obviously, you can't do that on your production and cause outages and a micro thing.
You could, you just have to update your resume really quickly.
Right. From I think the OEM perspective, in last 5 years, specifically post pandemic, we are seeing a paradigm shift that a lot of OEMs like NOC providers who offer observability software, they are actually using us to build the essential device drivers for the newer things that are coming out, right? And that's a kind of a very nifty use case for us is that I am an NMS provider, right? And I need to incept newer devices that came out for Fortinet or Palo or everything. And they can just keep going to buy devices or rely on customers or rely on the OEM itself to buy the gear, host it, and even if they get it as a not for resale option, they don't have places to house it. Imagine the number of devices the NMS provider or a network management provider supports, right? So we are kind of becoming a de facto platform for them because we can bring in that service. We have some of the largest lab. In fact, we are one of the largest lab providers on the planet. And I say it with great pride that it's been 9 years. We got nine data centers, and literally we have every piece of hardware or virtualized options with 200 plus OEMs available with us. So I'll give you a quick example and wrap this question up is Network Automation Conference 1 and the one which just happened about a couple of weeks ago. When I first was at the Network Automation Conference, the state of the automation or trend of the automation, when some of the large providers came and talk about it, was one step, two step automation, right? And people are still trying to get this Sam Altman's idea of Gen AI and how to use it in automation. 3 years down the line, I think the evolution or the trend has changed to the next step. It's going beyond the one step, two step automation, and people are thinking end to end workflow of the automation. That's the biggest shift that I see in the trends. And I see this because, pretty much every network automation forum, at least for last two, we have been sponsoring labs and we work with a lot of the speakers and we see what they were doing last year, what are they doing this year, and what the industry is moving towards. And some of the sponsors at NAF, right, we see a whole shift change in the thought process on now how they're seeing the automation pieces of the network on this.
I agree. And, we kind of follow through the AC0 to now AC3, right? AC4 is coming up in November. Can you give me an example of what you mean by one step, two step automation versus end to end workflow?
Okay, so I'll give you a very simple example here. So one step, two step automation is that, okay, I log into all my network devices and I check if my NTP is configured, do a stick check kind of a thing. And end to end network automation would be I check all these things are not appropriate and I go fix it, put a report in it, and put it in my observability portal. That will define an end to end automation part of a task.
I see.
Right. And that is where a lot of agentic AI is also coming into place and actually taking away those parts of manually doing all those tasks because it's important, right? Your router is off, clock is off, your logging is off, everything goes off. And a lot of it, we learn working with a lot of government agencies where stick checks are excruciatingly important and they do not have the leverage to use outside systems to come test it for them. So building all these little micro things has helped us grow. And I would encourage your users that for NAF2, we've actually built a lab and an entire workbook around various aspects of doing network automation using Ansible or Python. And I'll share this with you that you can actually put it with the podcast link that people can come and use it. In fact, for your users, we'll make about the first 50 users lab free for about a week or two.
Oh, awesome. Hey, please do check the show notes. We'll have those. And thank you, Deepak. Christmas came early for the like-minded network testing. So since you brought up AI, and which, thank you again for this generous offer for the listeners. And you mentioned about how Gen AI is, kind of taking a bite out of that end-to-end workflow. And, because you have multiple touch points as opposed to this one step, two step automation process. So where do you see AI and automation in the future of network engineering operations, besides just the fact that it's integrated into multiple steps, which, I think a lot of us are very fuzzy. I'll give you this data point that I just observed. I just saw John Capobianco's post about 2 years ago at Cisco Live. He was the only one talking about AI and having a talk on that. And now 2 years later, the keynote was about AI. All the workflow is about AI, and it's AI everywhere, all the time, everywhere. So, where do you see that in the future and currently? And just kind of diffuse that for us, please, in your opinion.
Absolutely. And God, that's a pretty loaded question, Eric.
Hey, I aim to please, man.
If I had a dollar every time asked me about this since Chat GPT, it's uncanny,
Yeah.
right? So
Since 2022, November, man, that's a landmark time. Yeah.
yeah, in my opinion, right, and just to be politically correct here, AI and automation, I believe, are no longer support functions,
Okay.
right? It used to be more of a support function. They're becoming an operating layer of the modern network. And to your point, nobody was talking about it at Cisco Lives about 2 years ago besides John, and now everybody is. So
Yeah.
and I'll give you a sneak peek into something as well in a second. So, at CloudMyLab, we believe the next evolution lies in transitioning from traditional automation. And when I say traditional automation, I'm talking about Gen AI
Okay.
to agentic AI, right? So Gen AI is generally unstructured data, a lot of hallucination. And to control that hallucination, you actually have to deploy more models to that, right? Agentic AI is actually taking that spot, specifically when it comes to the network automation part of it. So the AI that just doesn't assist but acts autonomously is the goal. Interpreting the goals and dynamically executing the workflow across various environments. It
Mm.
could be network, it could be compute, it could be observability part of it, as you would love. We are entering an era of IBN, or better known as intent-based networks, right? Cisco started talking about the intent-based networks about 4 years ago, that this would be brought in with a newer catalyst back in 2022, but it is here now in general, right? So when engineers define the what, right, the system, the IBM based system actually figures out the how, and this model is supercharged with neural networks. A lot of it is in concept right now,
Hmm.
but that is flowing towards us in the next coming, I would say, months and years. I would say early 2026 is where we will actually start to see a lot of network behavior driven by IBM networks.
Yeah, I would really encourage people to, if they haven't tested the difference between agentic versus like maybe RAG
Yeah.
style of I would definitely encourage people to test it out. And you could simply just go to, say, a Copilot or a Cursor and, choose between AI and versus Ask.
Mhm.
And the difference is really just mind blowing for me. So I think
Right.
in my own interpretation, this is just my own, words, that rack it's almost like copy and pasting from somebody's like chat GPT's window into your, IDE, versus agentic being somebody would just make the decision for you and the decision is better than your own.
Yeah. And the thing, it's just not about configuration automation anymore, right? It's basically a cognitive infrastructure. It's different the way it's done. And I would say, industry giants like Cisco are leaning into this. And I think in the past, they have driven a large part of it. So talk about Cisco, Juniper, Ciena, Palo. Everybody is trying to get a part of AI into their system because it makes sense. It basically takes a lot of tasks out of the actual systems and makes an engineer's life easy so they can actually focus on various parts that they need to.
That actually begs the question where, it kind of surfaces a lot when we talk about AI is, where do you think the network engineer today, where should they grow to, right? Like if AI is going to come in and be, understanding our intent and is going to, do things better than we do, then what's your recommendation on the person who's maybe just starting out network engineering or mid-career, or, even at the senior level? What would be your recommendation on which direction to go, what skills to learn, and, just staying competitive in the job market?
Absolutely. My strong suggestion here for the next generation engineers would be learn the basics of network,
Hmm.
learn Python, most importantly, and learn the basic AI models that would be driven through the programmability.
Mm.
Those three skills will land you jobs. And think of AI is there to help us, not take our jobs. AI works on the way we define it. It just doesn't start working by itself. It's not like a virus. It will spread in your network and understand everything and start doing your automations or start working for you. So AI still needs human to define the how. So to learn that how, you have to go through various phases. If you're fresh out of college, learn basics of networks, learn Python, and learn basic AI models and how they operate.
Yeah, I think it was Phil Gervasi who came on the show and he was saying if it's about how fast you could type commands into the terminal, you'll go out and hire the fastest typist, right?
Yeah.
And he or she would be the best network engineer. But it's really not about typing in the command. It's really about the intention of that command. How would you troubleshoot if it went wrong? It's about designing the best robust network and all that stuff. So everything that you talked about on learning the fundamentals and guiding the AI into the right direction, those are the valuable lessons. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Or
And honestly, that's why it's called intent-based networks. Intent comes from us, not from the AI.
right. For sure, for sure. So I really do enjoy that concept, but I think the devil is always in the details, right? So
Yeah.
it's nice to say, hey, learn the basics and then you turn around and AI is, like eating your lunch. So I think it's really we're in this era of just chaos and transitioning. So I would just also add to that you should probably go out and explore, experiment as much as you could using CloudMyLab for easier access, using some of the free models or even just a little bit of cost. The model. So I think experimentation is really key in the era of transitioning because you don't really know which one's going to win out. So you might as well just try out a bunch of different things and pick the one that actually fits to you, as if you're picking out the next language of choice, right? Python for me, but maybe it's something else for you.
Right. My comment about Python is kind of it's becoming the operating language for a lot of purposes, especially in terms of network operations.
Yeah.
And Eric, honestly, I would say early 2026, we are working on offering some basic AI models on the POC side of it. We do offer it for some enterprise customers today already. But
Hmm.
for learners who are fresh and wants to learn more about it, we're putting together a module, which basically would be a low cost module where they can actually work with some LLMs. See actually how, when I say learn basic AI, as you said, tell me what basic AI do I need to learn? Is I think that definition would come from there. And we'll send an announcement and probably we can do a second part of the podcast focused on those models only. But just to give you a sneak preview, end of 2026 Q4, we are coming out with a product out of CloudMyLab. It is called Network Conduit, right? It is for automating the DCIM and full stack infrastructure. In the last conversation, what's our stack? By the way, most of our stack is based on open source and everything is in-house tools. We developed everything from soup to nuts. And this was one of our problems. Scaling data centers at a pace that we are growing was one of the biggest challenge. So what we did is that why not use AI, build something which will basically make our deployment windows shorter. So we came out with the idea of network conduit. So just to give you a sneak peek preview on here, so future of how you would build, I would say rack or racks in your data center or basically get it in your DCIM
Hmm.
is all you have to do is take your OEM bill of materials. Obviously, if you're buying hardware, you have the bill of material from your vendors. Throw it at our network conduit UI. Our AI will parse it using neural network based models and it will generate your rack elevations, cable diagrams, IP scheming. It will flag designs anomalies, missing links, incorrect pairing. It will tell you that if is it more cost effective to use an AOC cable or you could use a standard fiber cable with the SFP or using these power supplies, you're going to run out of power. You're going to need a circuit, which is a 60 amp three phase or 30 amp single phase that you would need, or you need water chilled rack to actually deploy this workload. And you could print that documentation now, send it to your install team, and it's literally from there they can deploy part of it. But here's the kicker. We also offer a low code discovery agent or a hardened PI with that you can put it in your network rack. It will discover the entirety of it. It will create access for your teams, how you would define the access should be. It will also get that discovery data and put it in an NMS of your choice that you work with. Let's say you work with OpenText or Dynatrace or SolarWinds. You will have the data to be imported in there right out of the gate. Or you could use some of our NMS tools, which are built on Elastic for observability, and literally get your data in there and manage it. Now you can run anything in the future on that. There would be automation frameworks as we grow this project that would be coming everyone's way. So this is our bigger effort that we are actually planning to launch Q4 of 2026.
Right. I feel like I should cut a lot of these segments into, hey, you heard it here first and exclusive on Network Automation Nerds. And, because we just, kind of glimpse into your vision and your kind of product roadmap, right? I mean, it is end of 2026 and we are middle of 2025. So a lot could be changed, but at the same time, I think the concept, the direction wouldn't change. Maybe just the implementation detail or the timeline, maybe for all we know, it might pushed up, right? So I do appreciate all those insights and kind of your vision for the direction that it should go, and we could all benefit from that, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, coming up on time, but I do enjoy our conversations. I do want to ask you two additional questions. They're the hardest question in the world, so I hope you're ready, Deepak. So the first question is, who do you admire most in tech?
Oh my God, there are so many people. I'll say, and this is from one of my early days.
Mhm.
When I started learning more about technologies, I think I picked up this book called Routing TCP/IP.
Oh my God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And honestly, that actually was the book which changed my life to think differently about how things work. And I think, though there are a lot of people I really love in tech, but I think I have my deepest respect for Jeff Doyle, who actually, helped me change my mindset on how network works.
I would agree. And coincidentally, I mean, this wasn't rehearsed, right? Come on, listeners. We didn't exchange school notes before this. And when Jeff was on, I was actually telling him that I still had his like purple, darker green cover, not the new ones that has like the white and volume one, right? Like there was not even volume two back then. It was just, IGPs, right? Like I don't think the old volume one didn't cover BGP, but at the same time, it would cover the basics. So I'm glad you brought it up. I'll let Jeff know. Like his reach was deep and widespread.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So I have another question that's, super hard is, so what is the one tool that you can't live without and you can't say CloudMyLab? I take that option off the table, right? And that's what makes it hard.
Okay, so one tool I personally can live without is, I would say, Jira.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of, put together my day, my task, my everything is, I personally would be struggling without Jira because they kind of embedded into, literally, I've automated a lot of stuff which to work with Jira. So that's my go-to personal tool. But if you talk about network automation tool, I think I personally, since, a lot of automation is done by my team, I like Ansible playbooks. It's easy to make, it's easy to go. And, I really like using it if I were to build a quick automation and test something out.
Wow, I think that's a little bit of controversial on both ends, Deepak, because I know people who are, I won't say anti-Ansible, but they do hit the ceiling of Ansible pretty
Oh,
quickly.
yeah.
And they were recommending people, like, if you're going to hit the ceiling anyways that quickly, you might as well start with your own Python script or frameworks or whatnot. And Jira, I know a lot of people hate Jira. For me, I am more of a Kanban board, kind of a guy versus like, Jira. But hey, I appreciate your reasoning. I appreciate the answer. And also, I appreciate you being on the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I think there's a lot of insights, although this was a short time. And I do extend my open invitation that, especially when everything that you talked about is rolled out, I would love to invite you back and do a look back and say, hey, how many of it did come to? How many did you, change anything? And it would be fun to do a look back, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I just have one quick message for all the learners and students, and I think this goes deep with Cloud My Lab's heart. And my heart goes out to students because I know how difficult it is to make in the network and automation world. So, for all the dear learners and students, Lab as a Service by Cloud My Lab is a true equalizer. You don't need to be born into privilege or live near a fancy campus to learn networking. With just a browser, you can access the same enterprise grade infrastructure used by Fortune 100 companies without the need of spending $2,000 or building a rack in your garage. You'll learn on real network topologies, solving real problems, and stepping into a job market with confidence. We level the playing field for you. And what we are saying here is your potential matters more than your zip code. So, as I said earlier, practice makes perfect. And at Cloud My Lab, our motto is possibilities unlimited. Give us an opportunity to serve you.
Just from those 2 minutes, I already see slogans on the multiple t-shirts, right? Practice makes perfect. And then with the other one was your zip code doesn't matter, right? Like you're just a great equalizer and democratize learning. So I really do appreciate that. And I do think that's very true. But where can people find you, or if they want to follow you for, Cloud My Lab? I mean, obviously we'll have those links in the show notes. Is there any additional place that you want people to follow the company and the effort that you have?
Oh, yeah. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We are, from socials perspective, the most active social for us is LinkedIn. You can go to our website, cloudmylab.com, which has more updates.
Okay.
And if you need anything, or if you even just want to talk to us, just send us an email at support@cloudmylab.com and say that, you heard this podcast, you want to schedule time with me to talk to me. We have open doors. We have engineers that can work and understand your needs. And if you need help and you're a student, we have a very special place in our heart for students. Let us know, send us a redacted copy of your student ID, and you would be surprised what we can do for you.
And you wouldn't be an AI that answer. It would be like a real person.
It's a real person. We don't have AI bots in our system.
You have AI for other stuff, but not for interacting with your dear customers.
Yes, we have AI for searching our documentation, but we
Yeah.
have real users or real people to talk to you on our chat or our phones or anything that is needed.
Perfect. Thanks again, Deepak.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Network Automation Nerds. Do you have any feedbacks for Network Automation, our guest Deepak today, Cloud My Lab, or this episode? Please do send us follow-ups on packetpushers.net/follow-up. And we do want to hear from you. Connect with me, Eric Cho, on LinkedIn, where I post frequently about my work, my interests, and just kind of chatting virtually. Check out our website at packetpushers.net to find other network engineering focused podcasts, blogs, YouTube videos, and so much more. You can find podcasts such as Network Break, Heavy Networking, Packet Protector, DayTube DevOps, and so much more. And we do want to thank you, the wonderful listeners, for your support. Last but not least, remember that too much network automation would never be enough.